What's up, you guys? Sean Rossat, managing editor, FightfulMMA.com, and we have a big weekend for you. We had not necessarily a big weekend, but lots of stuff going on last weekend. We're going to talk about it. Showdown Joe, fresh off the plane from Japan. He was there for Rizin. We had UFC St. Petersburg. We're going to recap that pretty quickly. But this weekend, man, Bellator's bringing the heat with a very, very good card. I've spoken to some people on that show. James has as well. And then there's also UFC Fort Lauderdale. You know, people coming out of the woodwork to say, "Oh, I'm not surprised TJ Dillashaw got caught." We'll talk about that. But Joe, how you feeling? Are you jet lagged?
Actually, no, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm tired. I'm a little exhausted. Physically, it's a bad day when I can't work out because the body I know is not going to handle it, and I don't want to get sick. But jet lag, yeah, passed out early last night. I feel like I'm caught up, but one more night of sleep will be fine. But I'm glad to be back.
Well, we're glad to have you back. We are also joined by James Lynch. James, how are you?
I'm awesome. Glad to be here. Lots to talk about. Yeah, it's going to be a good week of fights for sure.
I mean, this weekend's fights give us an excuse to talk about John Fitch cutting the dicks off of action figures again.
Of course, that's the type of hard-hitting stuff you get here at Fightful.
We've got a dick pill sponsorship on the other shows, so I mean it's natural. Also, I just landed, get this, a robot litter box sponsorship, in which I am extremely thrilled about. But you guys will hear about that in the coming weeks. We have actual fight stuff to talk about. Joseph Benavidez, guys, is the latest Team Alpha Male member to come out and say, "Oh yeah, I'm not that surprised that TJ Dillashaw got caught. I'm surprised he didn't get caught sooner." More than what he said, James, how does that sit with you?
Yeah, I kind of see both sides of it, to be honest. I know people aren't going to like the diplomatic answer here, but I mean, if you're a teammate of someone, you're on that team, you're going in there every day, you can't just go and, rat the guy out. But then on the same token as well, like, you're in this sport, you're a competitor, like, I'm sure it would piss him off. And I saw a tweet that he had, and it kind of made sense, where he's like, you know what? I haven't talked to TJ in 2-3 years. That's why I'm saying this now. Like, I once I knew that was going on, I distanced myself. Like, he hasn't been at Alpha Male for a while. And I think, maybe that's when it started. I'm sure that wasn't the exact reason that he left and, went to different places to train. But, certainly I can see sort of both ends of the equation there. But yeah, you're also incriminating your team as well. Like, who's to say everyone should be under suspicion at that point? If everyone knew, who knows who was doing it?
Joe, your thoughts?
Everything James just said, right? Like, it's one of those things when you're with a teammate and you're potentially aware, or that he may be, doing performance-enhancing drugs. What does that say technically about you? Are you doing it? Are others doing it? There's loyalty, there's honor. Don't say nothing, and we all, we're all in this for the same thing. But then after he comes out to say it, now again, what is it saying about yourself and your teammates and the program there, and then the whole team ethics, right? So it's tough to say. I mean, like I said before in the previous show, after we were able to discuss it, it's not the first time I've heard about TJ Dillashaw potentially taking performance-enhancing drugs. It's also not the first time I've heard countless amount of mixed martial artists in the UFC, or just outside of the UFC as well, that are taking performance-enhancing drugs. The whole thing goes way back to when we wanted, potentially VADA to get involved. Instead, they chose USADA, and many people were happy. But really, what's truly come out of it? Guys are getting caught, girls are getting caught, they're getting suspended. But let's not be surprised when we find out some people have been trying to cheat the system and eventually get caught.
I mean, I've spoken pretty openly. There was one person in particular that trained alongside us. I wouldn't necessarily say they were part of our team, but they were very open about their PED use. And this was probably 9-10 years ago. That's when I got to discover the difference in training with someone when they were on and off the gas, because we knew when he was on and off the gas. But as far as I know, nobody else on our team ever did that, or at least it wasn't open. We didn't exactly go out and tell people, hey, he's doing this, he's doing this. But I mean, it is a weird moral dynamic, because the way that I had looked at it personally was, doesn't affect me. I'm dealing with it maybe an hour or two a week. Maybe they see it that way, but I think it's a bad look, especially with Chad Mendez also popping a couple years ago. It is a rough look, but UFC St. Petersburg was not a rough look. That was a fun show to watch. There was a little stretch in the middle of the show where we had a few decisions in a row. You had Sultan Ali retire off of a win, just said, I don't have time for this anymore. Other than that, we had Overeem rope-a-doping Alexei Oleinik. Like, as if you look at my tweets during that fight, I was like, man, Overeem got clipped and he doesn't seem to care. It seems like he's rope-a-doping Oleinik, and he was taking all these punches. I saw that Matt Roth said, why does Oleinik punch like it's the 90s? Which I thought was a nice touch. When Oleinik's in there and he's pulling guard right out of the chute, James, and doesn't get what he wants, I had a feeling it was going to be downhill from there. What did you think of this fight?
Yeah, great performance by Alistair Overeem. Another nice win for him, getting closer and closer potentially to another title shot. We'll see. The heavyweight division's a bit of a mess right now. But yeah, I mean, I think when we were breaking this fight down, we sort of saw the fact that there was a clear path to victory for Overeem, where if he just kept it standing, it was his fight to take. I mean, Oleinik wins all of his fights by submission. If it's not going to the ground, chances are not good he's going to win the fight. So, good for him and good for Oleinik. I mean, for taking this fight as well. It was short notice. He's 41 years old. He's fought everyone pretty much, even Chael Sonnen, like way back in, ages ago. So
noted heavyweight Chael Sonnen.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, this was a good result for the UFC. I mean, had Oleinik won, I mean, I don't think anyone was, clamoring to see him fight for a title anytime soon. And Overeem's the cash cow, and I think this was good for him to, get another big fight, after this.
Alistair Overeem is one of the most well-rounded heavyweights there are, and he doesn't get enough credit for that because of his hands and, quite frankly, his chin at some aspects of his career. For a guy who got clipped and was like, you know what, we're going to ride it out, we're going to let him get tired, and then we're going to finish him. Joe, it proved a bit of grit and mettle, I think, in Alistair Overeem. He's now won 2 fights in a row. And he is always a guy that if he's got a win or 2 in a row and somebody gets hurt about 4 weeks out of a fight, you can slide Alistair Overeem in there and nobody's going to be like, how dare you do that? What do you see in Overeem's future, Joe?
Well, it's tough to say with Alistair because he's been up and down. He's competed for the title. He's won every championship that's not labeled UFC. So he's still a tough guy. I mean, his last 2 losses obviously was that devastation against Francis Ngannou and then the domination sort of Curtis Blades with those TKOs. So in essence, like you said, you can slide Alistair Overeem into any main event slot, any heavyweight fight. Heck, you can put him in a title fight, and I don't think people would complain too much. They would, but he still has it. You just never know what he can bring to the table. Now, we should be prudent in saying, look at the 2 victories that he just, he's riding a 2-fight win streak, but look at the caliber that he's faced off against, okay? So we need to sort of respect that. But that's not to say that he can't jump in there and take on someone in the upper echelon of the division, because it is heavyweight. He's ranked number 6 right now. Is this recent? He's ranked number 6 right now. So, yeah, I don't have any problems with Alistair Overeem taking on any of these top guys again. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he called out Volkov.
Yes, that was the original fight scheduled for this show.
Right, so get her done.
I like that. I think it should happen. It makes a lot of sense. Elsewhere on the show, Islam Makhachev defeated Arman. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name because I can't. But Arman didn't look terrible in losing in this fight. It was a little more back and forth than many expected. Sergey Pavlovich picked up a win over Marcelo Golm. Pavlovich returning to the form in which many expected that he was before the Overeem fight. Roxanne Modafferi defeated Antonina Shevchenko. What a story Roxanne Modafferi has. Krzysztof Jotko defeated Amedovski. Did anything particularly stand out to you on this main card outside of that main event, James?
A couple things. First off, Volkov, I don't think will get that fight with Overeem. It hasn't really been reported that widely, but I read a report somewhere that it was USADA related, that he was taken off the card. So I think we need to look a little deeper into that, because I never heard an injury, I never heard an illness, anything like that. And there was one report that said it was USADA related. So I don't know if that's 100% true, but just keep that in mind as far as booking that fight. I thought Makhachev looked great. I'd like to see him against a more notable guy. This was kind of a weird matchup, just in the sense that you have 2 young guys looking to break out, and I guess they thought that our man would have a good performance, which he did. So it kind of raises his stock, even though he lost. Pavlovich looks great. Modafferi, great story here. I still don't think she's a title contender, but it's still a nice story, just the way she's turned her career around. And yeah, I mean, as far as the main card goes, I think sort of the big story was Antonina Shevchenko losing. I won't say she was hyped up, but I think that clearly having the last name she did, there was a lot of promise there. And she's not like a young prospect. She's 34. It's not polite to talk about a woman's age, but when it's in MMA, I don't think that grappling and the ground game is going to improve anytime soon. So really, I mean, she's got to figure it out. And I think this just shows that she'll never be in that upper echelon. And she doesn't really need to, because her sister holds the title.
That's a very good point. On the prelims, as I mentioned, Sultan Aliyev retired. You have Abdurakhimov with a good finish over Marcin Tybura. Alexachek finished Antigulov real quick. And then Mustafayev defeated Fiziev with a spinning back kick that quite honestly looked like it was blocked at first, but that was a nice one. Joe, anything else on this show really jump off the page?
Well, yeah, what James was saying. So first things first, I didn't have a chance to watch the full show, but I did catch some highlights. I definitely want to spend some time. There is no time. There's no Wi-Fi on the plane, so I wasn't able to watch the full event. And obviously, the day the event was going on was the day that Rizin and we had to get to the arena. So what I do want to know and get both of your opinions before I do watch the fight is the Modafferi-Shevchenko fight, because it was a split decision. Was it a fair split decision? Did Roxanne actually win this fight, or did Shevchenko win this fight?
No, Roxanne clearly won. It shouldn't have been a split. It should have been unanimous. Absolutely.
For Roxanne?
For Roxanne, yeah. Antonina got whooped.
She got whooped. So did Roxanne play her game, get clinch, take her down, control her?
Roxanne did a little bit of everything there. She just it was more about what Antonina didn't do than what Roxanne did in a lot of that, because I mean, and you even heard you heard the commentary pleading for it as well. Like by the third round, Antonina it was very clear she was out of this fight.
Okay, so unlike the Michael Venom Page and Paul Daly fight, I should watch this one?
It's worth it.
Right.
You know what? I'll watch Roxanne Modafferi win a fight any day of the week. She's that likable.
Oh yeah, she's an absolute sweetheart. James, you've interviewed her, right?
Roxanne? I've done like a media scrum with her, but never like a one-on-one.
Oh, she is a freaking gem. She is absolutely amazing. You walk out of an interview with her, especially in person, your own stock value and your aura improves. She's just such a nice human being. I still can't believe she's a fighter. It drives me crazy. But yeah, I'll definitely have a look at that fight, hopefully later on today or tomorrow.
Well, speaking of the nicest human beings in the world, King Mo got finished in round 3 of his light heavyweight championship fight at Rizin. Joe, Rizin 15, you were there. You had a nice seat. I don't know if it was in a studio or a clock tower, or
we were ringside.
If they put you ringside.
Yeah.
Fun show, as is tradition. Horiguchi wins. Nasukawa wins. What did you think of this, Joe? Explain to me your experience.
Well, it's always a fantastic experience going to cover the event or going to call the play-by-play. I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, what I always try and do, and you guys know me well enough that I'm going to stay politically correct. I do my best not to show any sort of bias whatsoever when I'm calling fights. But there were some times in some of the bouts where I was like, well, let me. I don't mean to rock the boat here, and I'm never guilty of doing that. But I thought I had to with some of the fights. The Damian Brown Takeda fight. It was at the point where I was like, hey man, like you're here fighting in Japan. You're not fighting anywhere else. The only way you generally get asked to return is by putting on, performance of the nights. I didn't think Damian Brown did that, although he did emerge victorious, and it's a tough fight. He's gone through a lot, especially with his PTSD, excuse me. So good on him. He did what he had to do. I was very impressed with Kanako Murata. She took that fight on 5 days.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
Were you?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that finish.
Yeah. So, so for those that watched the fight and heard me and Frank calling it, the angle of the Von Flue choke was on the opposite side of us.
It was amazing.
It was ridiculous, and we had a really in-depth conversation afterwards, especially with Jason Herzog, and he brought up the same thing that I brought up whenever OSP gets that Von Flue choke that Sean and I had discussed. Is the difference of when you're wearing gloves and when you're not wearing gloves, and the ability to trap at where the glove starts, making it impossible to pull out. And the way Murata had set it up, because she was in mount. And I was like,
yes.
Well, she's got to figure this out. And next thing you know, we saw the tap, and we're like, whoa, what just happened here? Because we couldn't see the opposite side. Even our screen that had the actual footage from Fuji TV or what they were recording live to tape, we couldn't see that side. So before we could even look at each other, Frank and I, and say, was that a Von Flue choke? It was done. It was absolutely fantastic. So I'm telling you guys right now, both you two, everyone tuning in right now, everyone listening to the show later on, remember the name Kanako Murata. You're going to hear a lot more about her very, very soon. As for the main event was a bit of a challenge because, Muhammad Lawal didn't look, he fatigued. It could be age. It could just be, it is what it is. Prohaska just kept putting the pressure on. he emerged victorious. And of course, Nasukawa, despite coming off that exhibition boxing fight loss to Floyd Mayweather, just looked ridiculous. I mean, his opponent, Fritz Biagtan, was just taking a beating and just kept coming back. So good on Fritz for taking it, but eventually the better fight won. And then Horiguchi is just Horiguchi. I mean, the speed. Ben Nguyen tried to take away space, did his very best to take away space, and Horiguchi had none of it. Just destroyed him. It was unbelievable.
Horiguchi is amazing. I gotta see him and Mighty Mouse fight again at some point. I don't know how it'll happen, but I would love to see that happening. The Von Flue choke has turned into a running joke on this show that is a legit offensive tactic now. Like, if you give someone like Murata that little bit of space, she makes it work. And I've not seen one pulled off in MMA like this. So I love that. I thought that was very cool. Really awesome. Let's talk about King Mo. This is a guy who I'm sure the three of us remember as 27-year-old prospect out of Sengoku that was highly touted, and he talked about, oh, I fight at money weight, I'll fight at whatever weight, and he has done that throughout his career. He is the guy that went on a run and beat Gegard Musashi in an absolutely dreadful fight, boring fight. I was there live, and ever since then, it's been up and down. He did have that outstanding streak in Bellator and Rizin for a while, but he's had an issue with consistency. And a lot of that, has been highlighted by the back of Emmanuel Newton's hand. But of late, he never has had a streak like this, where he's like 2-5, over 7 fights, where he's lost 3 fights in a row. Oh, by the way, he got finished in all 3 of those fights, and they were all within the last year. James, what do you see for the future of a King Mo? Because he is not at that level anymore.
Yeah, it's getting to that point where, we need to have that talk. I think, when you start losing like this, where you're getting knocked out consecutively, it's bad news. I mean, we saw this with Chuck Liddell. I think Mo's in that territory now. Now, granted, he's fighting really good guys. I mean, Bader, Liam Mcgeary, Yuri. But nonetheless, I don't know how much is left for him. Like, I think at this point, it's probably best for him to quit while he's ahead, maybe get one more fight for Rizin, get sort of a tomato can in there, come off a win. But I mean, he can't compete at a high level anymore. That's the reality of it. Consider what he's gone through with injuries. I mean, remember he had that staph infection. There were times
died.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, the fact that he was able to overcome that and go on. I mean, there was a point between 2014 and 2015, including the win over Yuri, the last time they fought in Rizin, where he was on like an incredible winning streak. So that King Mo unfortunately is gone. I think he's 2-6 in his last 2-5 in his last 7 fights. So it's not looking good for a 38-year-old in King Mo.
And it's very clear he's fought the likes of Phil Davis, Crocott, Bader, Mcgeary. And then when he takes on Mcgeary, I think that's the point where you say no more. I like your idea of him facing maybe an easy opponent. That way in the future, if he ever does get the itch to come back, he can at least say that he's coming off of a win or something like that. I honestly wouldn't hate if Bellator booked him against Tito or something like that. They could throw that on there and watch that misery just unfold. Joe, you had a front row seat to see this. So what are you expecting out of King Mo?
I don't know. I don't know what to say, to be honest with you, but no hard feelings against the guy. It's sometimes you get to a point in your career where you just can't compete at that high level anymore. And we saw it in this Prohaska fight, because as Prohaska, King Mo's corner was just, I don't know if you guys caught it on the mic because it was over to our left, but they were pleading with him, just take him down to the ground, stop exchanging. And then when he did try to go get some takedowns, Yuri either got up or defended. But by the time he was able to defend them, Mo was tired. Mo was exhausted in that 3rd round. So it's tough to say. Sometimes I don't know if he just got too comfortable with his, striking. Got to go back to the well, do what you're good at, and just take him down and control him. And if you got to win that way, try and get a TKO or judge's decision, that's fine. But again, it was what it was. What can you do? I don't know where he goes from here. Like James said, maybe it's time we had that talk.
Rizin, as a whole, very fun show and a very uncharacteristic, 5 decisions in a row. Never see that coming on a Rizin show, Joe.
So that was the conversation that I had with our liaison, and as well as Frank Trigg, because as the night was going on, I'm not used to calling decisions, right? They happen. They happen at every single Rizin event, but not at the frequency that was going on. And some of the excitement factor wasn't there for some of the fights because some of them were just ridiculously awesome. But you got to give credit where credit is due. Fighters still sometimes get in there and they neutralize each other. Styles will neutralize styles, and it is what it is. But yeah, as always, you're expecting more from a Rizin event sometimes, and it was fantastic. Don't get me wrong, because there were finishes, but I think you're right. There were more decisions that or more fights that went long than we expected.
What do you think is next for Kyoji Horiguchi?
Oh, damn it! I don't know. I don't know. There's got to be a title fight. There's got to be him defending that title. It's tough to say. I know Manel Cape really wants to get that rematch. He's angling for the title. Manel did emerge victorious. What do I think is next for Horiguchi? Bellator. He's got to fight Darian Caldwell in New York. I think that's what they're going to start working on, and I think they want to, because the way Rizin and Bellator, that relationship and the way it's working, and I'll tell you something right now, guys. There's a bit of a relationship with Rizin and the UFC. Nothing big, nothing spectacular, but don't be surprised if you start seeing fighters going back and forth. But in terms of Horiguchi, that fight, what is it, June or July in New York for Bellator? I think they're going to angle to get that rematch with Caldwell and try and get that Bellator gold around Horiguchi's waist.
I think that would be a good thing, because a star who's not necessarily a big star in the UFC could go over to Rizin, add a little bit of name value to a card, and then somebody like Horiguchi can come over to the UFC if so desired and really get a high-level performance, beat a lot of their guys. I'm thinking, like, hey, is Masakatsu still fighting? Is he still in Pancrase?
I think so.
I mean,
he's been. No, I don't think he's fighting. I don't think he's fighting.
I think he fought last year.
Did he?
I think last year he fought for their bantamweight title.
Wow.
Throw him in there against Horiguchi. Let Horiguchi avenge that loss. Why not? Why not?
Yeah. Stone Osborne. I don't think they'll do a co-promotion with one. I don't think it's going to happen at all. Joseph Bozo did mention that it's Bellator 222. That's the Chael Sonnen Lyoto Machida fight. But Joseph Bozo posed a good question on the chat. I think us three should discuss quickly. He stated Kyoji Horiguchi has won 12 straight. Should the UFC be embarrassed that they let him go?
Yeah. I mean, if that is the best place to fight, then for sure. James, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I understand why they released him, but if you want to call yourself the best organization in the world, you don't just let someone like that go that's like extremely talented. There's a few guys that they've released that, maybe at the time were like, whatever, but I mean, that's one that's going to bite them because he's so talented. And just look at the guys he's defeated. It's incredible what he's been able to do even after leaving the UFC.
Yeah, I don't think he was technically released per se by the UFC. I believe the offer wasn't what they were happy to accept. Therefore, what in essence, and the fact that Horiguchi's master was dying of cancer, he'd also decided, you know what, I want to go back home. I want to compete at home. I want my master to come to my fights. He passed away last year, but he was able to come to some of Horiguchi's fights. That was a massive decision for Horiguchi to make, because he said, you know what, this is who created me. This is who brought me. This is what I want to do moving forward. I'm still young. I can still do a lot of things. Remember, he trains at ATT in Coconut Creek. So he's in the States a lot. I even had a conversation with Mike Thomas Brown at length about Kyoji, and just the smiles that Mike Brown has on his face every time you mention Horiguchi. So it'll be interesting to see, but I think this Bellator fight's going to take place. I don't think the UFC is all that upset, especially that he was competing at 125 then. Now he's fighting really at 135 for Rizin. So you can imagine some of the names, and you go up and down this list of the top 15. You tell me where he would slot in, and you look at some of these names, top 15 at the UFC rankings. So yeah, I think Horiguchi would do just as good as he's doing right now in Rizin as he would in the UFC. So
speaking of Bellator, we have a Bellator show coming up this weekend. We've talked about the possibility of Horiguchi coming over and fighting Darian Caldwell over there, but pretty stacked show, all things considered, at least as far as name value goes. Not on the prelims, of course, because it is Bellator. And they're kicking off with Gaston Bayanos on that show. But where it really picks up, a rematch, Phil Davis versus Liam Mcgeary. This might not be the most exciting fight in the world. We're not going to pretend that. But Phil Davis, still a former champion. Liam Mcgeary, a former champion. James, this is a fight that I think that Phil Davis needs to win to stay relevant because of the Nemkov fight and him losing that. And for Liam Mcgeary, it's the same thing. It's a fight for relevance in this division, in this company. I look at Phil Davis, and he stands a much better chance of winning this than Liam Mcgeary for any number of reasons. The downward trend of Liam Mcgeary's career. Liam Mcgeary isn't getting any younger. He's 36 now. I don't know if he has the tools to put away Phil Davis, because Phil Davis has never been knocked out. He's never been submitted. Nothing. No, it doesn't happen. How do you see this fight going, and what do you see for the winner?
30-27, Phil Davis uses his wrestling. It's not going to be a great fight. I think really what it comes down to is they're hoping Phil will do something where he can finish this fight and show something, because really, I mean, he only has himself to blame for that last fight because it went the distance. I mean, he's got to start finishing fights, and that's what happens. That's what champions do. That's what a lot of these guys are able to do, is they're able to finish their opponents. Now, he's not fighting easy guys, but you still have to go in that extra gear and get it done. And I think Phil sometimes relies too heavily on his wrestling. And for Mcgeary, I mean, they're not that far apart in age. Like Davis is 34, Mcgeary is 36. It's not like a huge gap, but I know what you mean in the terms of, like, I think Mcgeary just hasn't really been the same since he was the title holder. He really needs to win this. I think if he loses this, we might not see him much longer in Bellator. And for Davis, I think they're hoping a finish will happen. But if I'm putting money on this, if I'm like a betting man, it's going to be 30-27, Phil Davis out wrestling him, and they're going to wonder why he couldn't finish this fight.
When I watched that Tito fight, I looked at it and I said, you know what? If Tito gets 10 cracks at Liam Mcgeary, Tito might beat him 5 times. Like, I didn't see it beyond that Emmanuel Newton fight. Speaking of Emmanuel Newton, Phil Davis came into Bellator and finished Emmanuel Newton and finished Francis Carmont, and we're all thinking, wow, UFC screwed up. This is the Phil Davis, the exciting Phil Davis. Hasn't been that way ever since. He had the Linton Vassell KO, but took 3 rounds to get there too. Other than that, it's been decisions, and long decisions. I think he's going to grind this out. I know that heavyweight is not in his immediate future like it was for Vassell or Bader. He told me that he wants to stick around at light heavyweight, and then when he does move to heavyweight, if he does, Joe, it'll be a permanent move. Are you joining us on the Phil Davis prediction?
I'm going to go first round knockout Phil Davis.
Hey.
Joe's just going to do that to say, I proved you wrong.
Why not? Why not?
Honestly, on paper, yes, you guys are bang on. It's looking like a 3-round unanimous decision for Phil Davis, but I can't sit here and agree with both of you on that. I'm going to go Phil Davis first round TKO. How's that?
I like it.
Ben Henderson in action. I also spoke to him for the site. He's taking on Adam Piccolotti. Adam is riding a 2-fight winning streak. I think he started off his Bellator career with like 5 or 6 wins in a row, drop fights to Yamuchi and Dave Rickles. So he's had some trouble, not even at the higher echelon, but one, maybe a few notches below that. Ben Henderson is doing pretty well of late, honestly. He's really turned things around since that early struggle in Bellator, and he's beaten Roger Huerta and Syed Awad. I don't know what beating Roger Huerta means these days, but he did it, and it's good to see him in the cage again. Ben Henderson is a guy that I always at least enjoy the idea of watching, Joe. Maybe not always in practice, but I go into his fight saying, you know what, that'll probably be pretty good. I fully expect him to take this, probably by decision. The last time that he's finished somebody and it wasn't a submission or an injury was like, I think, WEC days. So I don't think that he's going to brutally knock out anybody, but I could see him scoring a submission or maybe riding out a decision. What says you, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think he emerges victorious in this fight here. It's been a long time since he got a submission victory. That was against Brennan Thatch. No, that was actually Huerta. But before that, yeah.
Brennan Thatch.
Okay, well, you're saying. Listen, there's a certain vintage gene in all of our DNAs that just opines to look back at some of our favorite fighters or guys or girls that we've seen compete for such a long time to have those vintage performances. And I think Benson Henderson will always have that within me to say, you know what, this guy can pull off a crazy knockout or a crazy submission. Because, I mean, the brutality that he used to bring to the cage was never, ever respected. And I got to see it firsthand in person, which perhaps didn't translate as well when you're watching it on a broadcast. But this guy's a bad man, and he can still do it. It's just a matter of getting everything on point. I think we'll see a great performance by him in this next fight here.
How about you, James?
I wouldn't count out Adam Piccolotti in this fight, to be honest. I think we have not seen the best version of him yet. I mean, we saw a really good performance he had over Carrington Banks, who I think at the time had maybe lost one fight or was undefeated. So that was a good win for him. And they actually, I'm sure you guys know this, but he trains at American Kickboxing Academy, and actually he's sort of been a protege of Josh Thompson. And if you remember, Thompson fought Henderson, so I wonder if there's some good insight there as far as the game plan and all that. I actually spoke to both of these guys. I think this is going to be a close fight. I think if you had to put a gun in my head, 30-27 Benson Henderson. I think the wrestling might just be a little bit better on that end, but I think Piccolotti is one of those guys. I know he's 30. He's not like a young, spring chicken or anything, but I think every fight we're seeing something different. And I think this could be a fight where he could capitalize, because the win over Syed Awad was good. The win over Roger Huerta tells us nothing, because Huerta's been basically not the same since he left Bellator. And I think this could be a closer fight than people think. I'm curious to see the odds on this. I imagine Henderson will probably be like a 2-1 favorite, but I think Piccolotti is absolutely a game opponent.
Yeah, I can't find odds for anything but the main event so far.
Yeah, same here.
Co-main event, a title match. Ilima-Lei Macfarlane, somebody that Bellator obviously wants to be a big star and is putting in the work to do so. They gave her the star treatment in Hawaii. She's back in action against Veta Arteaga. Arteaga, 5-2. She's got 2 losses in Bellator. Had a bit of a winning streak since then and won 2 fights in a row. I think that Ilima-Lei Macfarlane is a more well-rounded fighter. There's always the threat of a submission with Ilima-Lei Macfarlane. James, I'm interested on your take, because thus far, Ilima-Lei Macfarlane in her amateur and pro career has not tasted defeat, and not as much adversity as a lot of women. That is something, I guess, that you could say that Arteaga has battled, but I see Ilima-Lei Macfarlane running away with this one.
Yeah, I never like to overlook an opponent, but I have to here. I mean, I think at this point they're just giving, just keeping Ilima-Lei active. She really should be in the UFC where she can really test herself, because I mean they're running out of contenders at this point. I think Arteaga has a nice winning streak heading into this one, but it's nothing Ilima hasn't seen. I mean, her win over Valerie Letourneau was super impressive, and Valerie's fought at the highest level in the UFC, fought for a strawweight title. The fact that she was able to do that in Hawaii, all that pressure and everything, and get that done makes me think she can beat pretty much anyone. She's got a good training camp too. Like, she trains at San Diego Combat Academy with, Liz Carmouche and Pearl Gonzalez. So she's getting a lot of different looks. It's going to be another second round submission. She'll have another dominant win, and then they'll just line up whoever's next. But Alima's the real deal. I think she's awesome.
Joe?
Yeah, I think the submission victory is going to happen here. I know that, I'm just looking at her record right now, and, Arteaga, her last win was a guillotine choke, so it doesn't mean she can grapple with Leia properly, but we'll see what happens. I'm just going with the champ here. I think she's got plenty of time to secure a takedown. If she can do it early in a round, I think she emerges victorious.
Ilima-Lei Macfarlane has stayed so active throughout her career too. I think she started fighting as an amateur in 2014, and since then I think she's got 14 fights. So I mean, that's very, very active. And she's doing that throughout her late 20s. And the win over Valerie Letourneau, like I look at Valerie Letourneau and I'm like, I don't know what Arteaga can offer that Valerie couldn't. And she still couldn't get it done. Main event, Bellator welterweight Grand Prix tournament, also a welterweight title fight. John Fitch challenges Rory Macdonald. Now, Rory Macdonald is a massive favorite here, and I think for good reason. I don't see John Fitch taking this one. James, I know that you were able to speak to John Fitch, at least in the months leading up to the fight. How do you feel?
Yeah, I think the line is a little high just because you never know. I mean, Rory's had a couple of fights that, where he's taken a beating, like the Lawler fight, and then, coming off that loss to Mousasi, which was completely one-sided. You wonder how you can keep coming back and improve. If you're looking at this on paper, I mean, clearly Rory has all the advantages in the stand-up. I think even wrestling, I think he, can neutralize a lot of those takedowns from John Fitch. But yeah, I will not be, I mean, if you're going to bet this fight, the money is on John for sure. I mean, he could, he's been off for a while, but really hasn't taken that much damage in his last couple of fights. And I think, his durability and there's a lot to be, said about, his career as well in terms of some of the wins that he's had. But Rory should get this done. I imagine this isn't going to be an exciting fight. I think it's going to be kind of the type of fight where Rory's going to kind of just play it safe and get the win, because that's really what he needs here. I mean, I don't think he's done. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, after losing the way he did to Mousasi, he'll never be the same. They said that about Lawler, and look, he beat Paul Daly, beat Douglas Lima. Like, clearly he's not done yet. I think he'll get the win, but I have a feeling this could be kind of a very unappealing fight, but Rory will just go out there, have the smart game plan, get it done, get a decision here. I do think it will go the distance. I think Rory will get his hand raised.
I do too, and I think that's probably the last thing that Bellator wants. They probably want a quick finish. That way they can move on with the tournament, and that Rory Macdonald can gain a little bit more buzz. I hope that's how it unfolds from a visual perspective, Joe. What do you think is going to happen?
And new Bellator champion.
You're lying.
He's going to win. Fitch will win. Fitch will win. Mark my words.
Decision? How does he get it done, Joe? Let's hear it.
TKO fourth
Does he
round.
bring a gun in the ring?
TKO fourth round.
Okay.
I have to go against you guys. I have to. I can't go on the bandwagon.
I'm trying to find John Fitch's last win by knockout here.
When was the Civil War?
1812, I believe it was. Yeah, no, he wins by TKO.
Okay, his last TKO win, get this, guys. I could be wrong with this unless I'm scrolling too fast. Thiago Alves, June 2006.
Proves my point.
I love the fact that you had to scroll.
He's due in this decade. The numbers prove it. He's due in this decade. It's got to happen.
Oh, man. Rory Macdonald's winning this fight. We will have coverage of Bellator. I'm doing a post show after all that, but we also have UFC Fort Lauderdale this weekend.
I'm just looking to see if Faraz is texting me now, calling me every name in the book.
Oh, man.
He will.
I like John Fitch, by the way. He's a really good interview. A lot of interesting stuff, even outside the cage. But no,
damn right he is.
Yes. Likes to do different things with his wrestling figurines, but whatever.
Yeah. UFC Fort Lauderdale this weekend. Some interesting names on this show. Let's start with the prelim card, and we're going to give you all some betting odds as well. Court McGee, a -160. Diego Lima, a +140. You have Angela Hill stepping in late notice to face Jody Escobel, but Angela's a -325. Escobel, a +265. Then you have Jim Miller, a -140. Jason Gonzalez, a +120. Well, I look at that, and this is the early prelim show. Jody Escobel, maybe some value on her. Anybody who's in a late notice fight quite like that. You have Court McGee, who is he's been around the block a little bit. He's done some things, hasn't exactly stayed consistent. And then you have Jim Miller. I will always watch Jim Miller fight. I don't give a damn. But when you look at this, it is even though he's 1-1 in his last two, always a must win for Jim Miller if he's coming off of a loss, because you're going to have people saying, is it time for retirement? Has he taken too much damage? Yada, yada. Joe, your thoughts on these early prelims and some of the personalities involved?
Court McGee wins. Jody Escobel wins. Jim Miller wins.
James?
I think Diego Lima is a live dog here, to be honest. I really liked his win over Chad Laprise in his last fight. And McGee is, obviously durable. You have to basically go and kill this guy if you want to beat him. He's very difficult. And we saw that in the last fight against Alex Garcia. But I don't know, man. Diego Lima, I did not think he was going to beat Chad Laprise, and he did. So I'd be curious to see. I don't know if I'll pick him, but I certainly think there's value there. Escobar is interesting because, while she had a really tough opponent in her debut when she fought Carolina, and
she went the distance with her too, right?
Yeah, and then she had to fight Jessica Aguilar. Like, it's tough to say where she really is because those are two really good opponents. And Angela Hill's been super disappointing. I mean, the way she lost to Randa Marcos doesn't submit people in the first round like in the last 4 years, and she got submitted in the first round against Randa. So looking to bounce back here. I think Escobal for sure is a live dog as well here. Because again, we don't know how good she's been. She's been in the lab basically working. She was supposed to fight Penne, and then Penne breaks her ankle or busts her ankle before they're supposed to fight, and then Penne's out of this fight. So I think Escobal is interesting. And I like Jim Miller over Jason Gonzalez. Gonzalez hasn't fought since I think August of 2017. His best win is J.C. Cotterell, way back in 2017. Gonzalez hasn't fought since it was September 2017. Gregor Gillespie, but still, I think Miller's got the experience edge in that one. So I'll go Miller. I'll go Escobal. I think Escobal could pull this off, and I'll go Diego Lima as well. I say he pulls this off too.
Speaking of Penne, is there any update, James, on how severe her injury is or when she might be back? Because as I'm looking at it, she's off that USADA thing. She's lost 3 fights in a row. She has not won since 2014.
She must be steaming right now. Must be really,
God.
I mean, she's just been treated like a side dish. It seems with her injuries, it's just crazy. Like I don't know. So, I don't know. I think I mean, she could be cut here. I mean, isn't this like coming on like Dave Terrell territory?
Oh
like
my.
we've seen fighters where they've been so injured they just can't compete, and the UFC's cut them. And Penne is, it's not like she's coming off a bunch of wins. She has a bunch of losses. So to answer your question, no, I don't know. I just wanted to make some puns.
Yeah, she really got sauced in that Joanna fight.
Oh, I was going to say that.
But the prelim card, Carla Esparza in action against Virna Jandiroba. And Jandiroba is the favorite here.
Yeah.
And she's a highly touted prospect. She's undefeated, fresh off of 3 wins in a row in Invicta. And as we know, that gets you a UFC contract. That's like a golden ticket for those women's divisions. Carla Esparza, a former UFC champion, but she's at plus 100. Jandiroba is minus 120. You also have Andrei Arlovsky at plus 120. Augusto Sakai at minus 140. Not enough for me to put any money on because it's heavyweight and it's Andrei Arlovsky, and man, those fights can be boring. Then you have Ben Saunders, who even at plus 180 is always a live dog to me. He's taking on Takashi Sato, a highly touted prospect out of Pancrase, a minus 220. Joe, any predictions for these fights? And you got a couple of former UFC champions on these prelims.
Yeah, I think Esparza emerges victorious in this fight here. I don't know. I'd put 5 on her for sure. The Arlovsky and Sakai fight, it's very difficult to say because, it's which Arlovsky is going to show up. He's eventually, Father Time's got to catch up to him. So maybe I'll lean towards Sakai in this fight here. And then the Ben Saunders-Sato fight, I'm going to lean towards Sato in this fight because I guess you can make the argument that Ben Saunders in his career right now is almost like that welterweight gatekeeper. How good are you? If you can't beat Ben Saunders, you don't belong in this division. You don't belong in the UFC. If Sato does emerge victorious, then he belongs in this division, right? Saunders is just trying to keep his job.
James, how about you?
Well, we missed Gilbert Burns and Mike Davis as well, and I like Gilbert Burns in that fight. Mike Davis, if you remember, was on Contender Series, and then he won recently at Island Fights, so he's getting a shot here. But Gilbert Burns, always dangerous.
I'm taking Gilbert Burns in that fight, by the way.
Yeah, if he makes weight, he should be fine because I know he's had some struggles getting down to 55, but I like him. The Esparza, that fight's interesting. The thing I wonder with Carla is, she really got mauled in her last fight. Like, if you thought the fight against Joanna was bad, I mean, Tatiana Suarez completely dominated her. And, I remember when she lost to Joanna and she took some time off and then came back and fought Juliana Lima in what was one of the most boring, safe fights you'll ever see because she just needed to get a win just to get back on the winning track. I have a feeling she might try that here. And if that's the case, I think she'll lose. So I actually kind of like Jandiroba here. I understand the value here in Esparza, but I mean, you can't keep losing like that. Like that again, that was such a beatdown that Suarez put on. It's tough to come back. Arlovsky and Sakai, flip a coin. Neither has been that impressive. Maybe I'd lean towards what are the odds at right now? I mean, Arlovsky's an underdog. I mean, he could probably win. Yeah, I might throw some cash on him. And then, Saunders Sato, typical fight, prospect versus veteran. I'll go with the prospect in this one. Saunders, unfortunately, just taken too much damage in his career, and I think he may take some more in this fight on Saturday.
Roosevelt Roberts, a massive favorite, minus 410. Thomas Gifford, a plus 330. I have Roosevelt Roberts running away with this one. You got to believe the UFC wants that as well, James.
Yeah, but I mean, trust me, don't count out Thomas Gifford. This is a guy a couple times on the regional scene was given opponents that he was supposed to lose to, and Trey Ogden especially. And he just goes out there and gets the finish. And you look at the experience edge. I mean, Gifford, I should say, has got way more fights than Roberts. I think Roberts will win. I think as far as the two prospects go, Roberts has the bigger upside. But Gifford, don't count him out. We talked to him on Fightful. I mean, this guy has been paying his dues on the regional scene, and finally he got linked up with a good management team and got his ticket to the UFC. So don't count out Thomas Gifford in this fight, but my pick will be Roosevelt Roberts. But for sure, at my what's the odds at right now? Plus 330. Yeah, I'll put some money on Thomas Gifford for sure.
Good head of hair on him too.
Yep.
John Lineker, a guy that we've spoken about a lot recently because of people popping for EPO, was fighting a guy in Corey Sandhagen who hopefully does not pop for EPO. Sandhagen at plus 115. John Lineker a minus 135. This is a good fight. I really like this fight. John Lineker, as we mentioned, has only ran into those issues when it is somebody who's got a little bit of a questionable background in that degree. Sandhagen's getting a real opportunity here. He beat Austin Arnett. He beat Alcantara. He had that submission win over Batista, but he's got 3 finishes. He's got a fight of the night along the way. He's 3-0 in the UFC. Joe, this is a real opportunity for Sandhagen, but I'm still picking Lineker to win this. And I think that he might do it in fantastic fashion.
Yeah, I think Lineker emerges victorious in this fight, to be honest with you. I mean, if Sandhagen wins, we'll be having a really good conversation about him on Tuesday. But right now, I think just the way things are going, Lineker is not going to give him any space. As long as he's careful, doesn't get clinched or get taken down, I think he emerges victorious.
James?
There's levels to the bantamweight division. I think Corey Sandhagen's going to find that out. You know, people have sort of, I hate to use this word, romanticized about Corey Sandhagen just because of that fight with Yuri Alcantara where he was losing and he came back and he's super exciting. And then his last fight was another highlight reel finish against a guy who really shouldn't have got the UFC call-up, in my opinion. I think we're going to see the true Corey Sandhagen, that he's tough as hell, but Lineker is going to find a way to finish this fight. I think he's still extremely talented. He's up there in that conversation and kind of a guy who gets forgotten because he's had, fights canceled and things like that. So I expect Lineker to get the finish here, but Sandhagen's, very tough to put away. And in my opinion, has the best social media handle, Coors Light, playing off Coors Light, which is beer, obviously.
Talk about a real gatekeeper line. Glover Teixeira, -110. Ian Cutelaba, -110. This could be big for Cutelaba. 2 straight finishes. He's had some trouble getting into the cage of late. I know that he had to pull out, I think, in January because of an injury. This fight was supposed to happen. But Glover Teixeira instead got to fight Carl Roberson, which that win makes this fight look a little bit more enticing to me because Teixeira's coming off a win. He's won 2 of his last 3. If you don't belong in that top 10, he's probably going to beat you, he being Glover Teixeira. 39 years old. He is not getting any younger. Cutelaba, the opposite. Oh, I mean, he's not getting any younger, but he's 25 years old. This could be a career-changing fight for Ian Cutelaba, James. Do you think he gets it done?
I don't. I think Glover gets it done in this one. Just you look at the experience, you look at the fact that I realize Cutelaba, is a finisher, and he's a guy that is always dangerous on the feet no matter where it goes. We saw that in his last fight against Antigulov. But I think Glover weathers the storm and he gets a decision here. I really do. I think he can pull this one off just with the experience and everything else. I don't think we can count this guy out just yet. He's one of those guys where age doesn't seem to matter. I realized there was a period there, when he was on his losing streak where you're kind of like, might be the end of him, but he's got 9 lives. He's like a cat. He can keep coming back. So I think Teixeira takes this one.
Joe?
Glover. I'm taking Glover in this fight here. To take nothing away from Cutelaba, but I don't think Glover's done just yet. I think he's got some wins in him, and I think he's, I know we're talking about the gatekeeper aspect here, but I think he emerges victorious for sure and with a finish.
Talk about a good fight. Alex Oliveira, -185. Mike Perry, +160. I got Oliveira taking this one in a runaway. He's much more well-rounded. He's just a good fighter. I can't say that Mike Perry is compared to Alex Oliveira, but Mike Perry is that type of guy who he will fight absolutely anybody. Doesn't matter who it is. That has led to him losing 3 of his last 4, and the split against Paul Felder is his only win. I think the romanticized of Mike Perry is long gone. I can't believe this was a guy that people wanted to fight Darren Till at one point, myself included probably. But he is fighting a Cowboy Oliveira who is coming off of a loss to Gunnar Nelson, but he's got a really impressive resume, and he can finish you on the ground, on the feet. He can ride you out. There are a lot more ways for Alex Oliveira to win this fight, Joe, than Mike Perry. Yeah,
I think Oliveira, Cowboy should win this fight here. I think you said it very, very succinctly about, our romance with Mike Perry and the whole, this guy's an upper echelon fighter at 170 pounds is pretty much long gone. He's going to have to start proving us wrong, and he can do so by beating Oliveira, that's for sure. But on paper right now, the way I see this fight breaking down, I think Cowboy emerges victorious.
James?
Yeah, I like Cowboy here too. It's going to stay standing. I think Max Griffin's sort of still the blueprint to beat Mike Perry is that you stay calm and composed, you pick your shots, and you can get a victory here. And to me, Alex Oliveira is a lot better of a striker. And, Oliveira doesn't have to worry about the ground like he did in his last fight. So if it stays standing, which it will, because this is going to be a potential fight of the night, Oliveira is going to come out victorious. The question is, does he finish Mike Perry or does it go the distance and it's just one of those beatdowns? I'm going to go probably a decision in this one.
I'm a little surprised at the betting lines for this Dmitry Smoklayov and Greg Hardy fight. Dmitry is a plus 275, Greg Hardy a minus 335. And we've seen Greg Hardy face some adversity already. Now, I'm not accusing Dmitry of being like some world beater or anything, but he's faced some guys that are way more experienced than Greg Hardy and won. He's also faced some guys that, quite frankly, suck. His record is very padded with a lot of 0-1s and 1-1s. But I look at him and I'm like, all right, I know that he's been training for like a decade. I think that's going to play a role in the Hardy fight. I think that he gets the win over Hardy. And he's definitely going to be one of my I got 5 on it. I think that we probably see him tap out Greg Hardy. I don't think Greg Hardy knows what a Bravo choke is, much less can defend one against a guy who has a win on his record, even against a complete and utter scrub. James, am I alone in this? He was 0-2 in his initial UFC run, that being Dmitry. Will he get it done against Greg Hardy, or will Greg Hardy continue his rise?
Greg Hardy will continue his rise. I'm going the other way on this one. I think people really overlook that Alan Crowder fight, and they look at it like, oh yeah, Crowder was winning and Hardy lost and the illegal knee. And I think a lot of that is because of the stuff that Greg Hardy's done outside the cage. And I think that's blinded a lot of people. If you go watch that fight, I don't think Hardy was doing as bad as people said. Clearly that was a fight he was supposed to win and he didn't. But I mean, just his athleticism in the heavyweight division is a scary thing. I mean, he's a guy that can put a lot of people out, people that haven't been knocked out before. He's gone out there and finished them. I think you're going to see a first-round knockout here. I think Hardy knows what he did wrong in that last fight. He's got another good opportunity. He knows if he loses this fight, he's out. I mean, it'd be very tough to promote someone that's lost 2 in a row. Even the stature that he has, they put him. If anything, I think the UFC would put him on a Fight Pass show that they could at least still promote. But I think Hardy gets the first-round finish here. They know what they're doing here. Smolov, 34 years old, lost 2 fights in the UFC, got 1 win, and now he's back. That seems really suspect to me. And I think the UFC knows something we don't. That is, they're going to get – and look, this is in Florida. Hardy trains at ATT. This is a setup fight. They want Hardy to win, and I think he will. I think he'll get a first-round finish. But I'm not betting minus 330. That's crazy.
Are you surprised they didn't just rematch him with Crowder?
I am a little bit, just because they had sort of, it ended in a bit of controversy, but at the same time, maybe they saw something in Crowder. They're like, geez, we screwed that one up. We don't want that to happen again.
Joe, your thoughts on this co-main event?
James just went 3 for 3 and hit 3 home runs with his assessment. So, Smolyakov, something's going on here. The fact that he's in a co-main event slot against Greg Hardy. Greg Hardy, once again, in a co-main event slot or high up on a card. You take a look at what's happening here. I think the UFC's investment in Greg Hardy, they want to start making some of their money back. In that Crowder fight, they were like, whoa, you don't need to fight him just yet. We're going to wait a little bit. Let's get you some more experience. Let's see what you can bring to the cage this time. And I think, as weird as it may sound, what James said about the matchmakers potentially calling or potentially making this a setup fight, I think he's kind of bang on with that analogy, because I think Hardy, they really want Greg to win. They really want Greg to win. They want to continue, despite all his turbulence and turmoil outside of the cage in his past. I think with the money and the promotion that they've invested in him, they want to start seeing him pull off some victories and ideally in spectacular fashion. When you put these fights together, you never want to put together fights that are going to go the distance. You want to put together fights that are going to see finishes. And I think they see Hardy finishing Dmitry in this fight here. So not that I agree with what Shelby or Mick are doing, but I'll take Greg Hardy in this fight.
Main event time. Jack Hermansson steps in, replacing Yoel Romero against Jacare Souza. Souza is a minus 200. Hermansson is a plus 170. Similar to the Cutelaba Glover Teixeira fight, but magnified significantly. This is a chance for Jack Hermansson to step up and become something special in this division. And he's already looked upon fondly and all that, but Jacare is a, how do I say, despite win-loss over his last 4, amazingly relevant name He's got 5 performance bonuses in his last 6 fights, so you can always expect something exciting out of him. And Hermanson, as a guy who has lost to the likes of Cesar Ferrara and Thiago Santos, this might be his best shot to rise to prominence and rise to relevance to that degree. Now, he fought just literally 3 weeks ago and submitted David Branch. He fought just a few months before that and submitted Gerald Mearshart. I don't think he's going to submit Jacare Souza, Joe, but what kind of chances do you give him against Souza in this fight?
I'm always going to give him a chance. I don't think he's going to submit Ronaldo Jacare Souza in this fight. I think he needs to watch his chin. Again, we're talking about Jacare, whose skill set is sort of diminishing, right? We're not seeing that killer as much as we used to in the past, where it didn't matter where that fight went. He's always got a chance, whether by knockout, TKO, or submission. I just think with this matchup here, remember, he's supposed to fight Yoel Romero, right? So that, I mean, you're training for a monster. You're training for a beast. You're getting a different type of one in the Joker in this fight here. So it's tough to say. I just think that the moment this fight gets down to the ground, Jack's in big trouble, and he's going to be on defense mode for a lot of this fight here. And I just think with 25 minutes, unless he can really work on his he was in shape for his last fight, but didn't get to execute it because the fight ended in 49 seconds against David Branch. But technically, he should be in pretty good shape. So maybe he carries Jacare to the later rounds and goes for a finish. But I just think that the way Jacare fights and the way his style is set up, I think he gets his fight down to the ground and emerges victorious.
James?
Sorry, as I'm about choking there. I think that Jacare wins this fight. I think, if you look at this on paper, Jacare is just still at a high level, even at his age. I mean, you think he's going to slow down. You thought after the Whitaker loss, he might be done, and then he goes up there and knocks out Derek Brunson. He went to a split with Calvin Gastelum, I should say. That's not a bad loss to have. He knocked out Weidman in his last fight. Like, you look at these losses here, Gastelum, Whitaker, Romero, like a split to Romero too, in a fight that was very close. He's fighting at a high level, a lot bigger level than the guys that Jack Hermanson has fought, Talis Latis, Gerald Mearshart, Brad Scott, guys like that. He did submit David Branch. I guess it's possible he could submit Jacare, but I don't see that happening. I think just overall, I think Jacare is still up there, and I think he's probably pissed off that he didn't get a title shot, and I think he's going to go up there and put on a great performance. But I will say, when you've got a guy in Hermanson who's really got nothing to lose here, he wasn't supposed to get a fight like this after his last win. It can be a scary thing. So, I think value-wise, it's probably on Hermanson, but I think, Jacare for sure has got to be the favorite, and he's probably going to get the win here. He's just dangerous everywhere, and I think Hermanson's going to be, it's going to be too much for him.
I think Souza is going to win this as well, and probably an impressive fashion. And that's usually how he wins. That's just usually how he wins. And even the Gastelum fight was outstanding in a loss, and that was a split decision. I think this is Souza's fight. It's also time for our UFC Fort Lauderdale. I got 5 on it picks. I mentioned in the preview, I'm picking Dimitri at plus 275 against Greg Hardy, a minus 335. I think maybe the experience of Dimitri, even though it might not be high-level experience, could play a major factor in this fight going his way. I like James' pick of the plus 330 Thomas Gifford over Roosevelt Roberts, a minus 410. While I'm picking Roberts to win this fight, that is a very extreme line, and James had a lot of good points about Thomas Gifford's chances in that regard. Then we got Angela Hill. She's a minus 325, so I've got Jody Esquibel at plus 265. Don't know if I put these odds personally really close together because Esquibel had been training for this fight. Angela Hill, probably not. This is a late notice fight. Now, I'll give anybody with that type of a betting line an opportunity in a short notice fight. Esquibel at plus 265, some good value there. We will have coverage of this show this weekend. Joe, what do you got going on this week?
Same old, working away, and go Leafs go. Game 7 tonight. So we'll see what happens with the Leafs coaching, and got a bunch of things that I'm working on. And of course, Sean, as you know, some personal stuff that I got to deal with. But other than that, yeah, looking forward to the weekend.
James, how about yourself?
Actually, like a little bit, like kind of slowing down a little bit, which is great.
Nice.
Kind of need a little bit of a break there. So I got some interviews coming up, some stuff in the horizon. Got an interview with Neil Magny that you guys will see in the next little bit that I did this morning. Really good stuff from him. Just gonna, I don't know, kind of. It's one of those weeks where things aren't crazy, so I can kind of just work on some other stuff, which is great. And obviously, going to be watching the card this Saturday, both cards, Bellator and this one.
Guys, leave us a thumbs up on this video, subscribe, all that stuff helps out a lot. James has a lot of great interviews over here. I'm doing UFC rankings updates this week as well. Check out FightfulMMA.com. Join our live discussion. Hundreds, if not thousands of comments over there. Thank you, guys. Until next time, we're out.